the development series. This is one of two calls. Today is Budgeting 101, and the objective is really how to build a budget from scratch. So you're going to learn about tools that you can use to build your 2018 budget, think strategically, and really help create a budget that's going to deliver your business goals for the next year. And you know, it could be whether this is your first time or you've done this before with this company or another one. We hope you'll get a lot out of it. The second call is going to be in September, in a few weeks. It's September 21st, and that one's going to be learn how to dash, and we made it a verb now. So it's the finance tool, and we'll talk more about that later. Today we have three awesome speakers, Kirstin, Guinn from Snowmass, Jeff Tomczek from the brand level, and we also have Kelsey Prince with Paradise Point. So I'm going to give the reins over to our first speaker, and she'll be walking us through how to begin this entire process. So you have the tools to leave this call and start working on your 2018 business plan.
Okay, actually, Sarah, can you take the screen back, because I kind of spaced it and forgot to pull up the presentation?
That's okay. So, yep, I will certainly. I have it up, and I will take it from. I'll be your clicker.
Thank you. Okay, so Sarah kind of just introduced everything, but just in terms of where this fits, it's managing your budget is sort of the second step. And in terms of, you know, you put your marketing plan together. Now we're going to talk about budget, and then you would put together your marketing tactical plan. And I'm really going to focus on the benefits of the tactical plan here. And I'm really speaking to folks out there that are pretty new to this process. Jeff's presentation is going to, you know, get into a little bit more of strategy and details, but I'm going to talk about how to truly get started. If you haven't done it before, you haven't done it with us before. So using your marketing tactical plan to understand the areas of the overall budget that you are responsible for. And as marketing managers, we are most likely responsible for the media and e-commerce line items, print media, if you're still doing print media, managing photography spends, collateral spends, and then public relations spends. So each of us is kind of, we're all nuanced a little differently at the property level. So maybe you have a communications manager and public relations isn't your deal, but some mix of this. And I would really encourage you, if you have not updated your marketing tactical plan, this is the time to make it work for you, because this will help you understand what you do for each of these line items in your budget. Eric, you go to the next slide. So the first step, if you're, you know, maybe you manage your tactical plan, but you've never even seen your budget. The first step is to meet with your DOSM or whoever, you know, like I said, we're all kind of nuanced at our properties, but we'll just say DOSM for now. So you need to understand what you're spending in each category and how that rolls up into the annual budget. So what do? You say, okay, media and e-commerce. Like, what is the budget for media and e-commerce? Oh, okay, it's X number of dollars. Okay, what is categorized in media and e-commerce? Ask to see, you can find these by seeing the signed agreements. So your PPC campaign agreement, your digital spend agreement, your TripAdvisor business listing. You had to sign, someone at your property, if not you, had to sign contracts for all of this spend. So ask to see all those agreements so that you can go line item by line item and see what rolls up into the media and e-commerce budget. And then from there, you add in anything that you manage on your own, your Yelp business, enhanced business listing, for example. If you run local print, anything that's not managed by the agency but is managed by you, those are all line items in these categories. And so at the end of this process, you should literally know what every single line item in the media and e-commerce budget is for. You should understand what every single line item in the print media budget category is for. And if you don't know, if there's something in there that you don't understand what it is, ask. Your DOSM should know. There's plenty of people at in our corporate headquarters that will know, like, you know, there's a lot of stuff in research that's Tableau or data cleansing or whatever these things are. If you don't know what they are, ask somebody. And you can always ask the co-chairs of the marketing affinity team. We'd be happy to walk you through these line items if you're not sure what they are. So then once you've got all that going on, you're ready to think about moving forward and starting to plan for 2018. So Sarah, can you jump to the last slide? So then what you do is you start tracking your spend. So you can either track your spend within your marketing tactical plan if you want to add a column that deals with spend. You can create a second Excel spreadsheet that helps you track the spend. You can really do whatever works for you. Our next call is all about using Dash to track your spend, which is a really powerful tool. But, you know, personally, I love spreadsheets, and I still keep a secondary spreadsheet, even though I also use Dash, because it just helps me personally visualize my spend. So you go line item by line item, month by month. You just start, you know, tracking each one. Like, okay, I spent this much in PPC in the month of July. I spent this much in the month of August. You know, I have budgeted this much for the month of September. You do that for every single line item, every single print buy. It's all in there. So you can track your spending. You can anticipate where you're going to have savings if you know that you committed to something, but now you're not actually going to do it. You're backing out, and boom, there you've got $2,000 worth of savings that you can either just chalk up to savings or you can reallocate that spend. But all of it leads you to the fact that you're actively managing what you're spending from a marketing point of view. So a lot of us get into the point, and especially when we're new to the budgeting process, where we're very much on the execution side of things. Maybe we're on the calls with our digital agency every month, we're executing the strategies, but we don't really know the entire annual look. We don't know what it looks like, and maybe sometimes you just go into your DOSM's office and you say, like, hey, I have this great idea. I want to do this. I want to, pay for a Snapchat geo filter for this great event. And your DOSM says, yeah, sure, that sounds great, do it. And you go do it. And so we're in this execution frame of mind. The next step is to understand, like, I have this much money to spend, and the way I plan to spend it to, meet my goals is to do X, Y, and Z. That's really where, once you started doing this process on a monthly basis, then you understand, like, I've got $2,000 extra. I'm going to do this with it, or, however that comes to be. And then one thing I will say is a huge part of the annual marketing budget is the systems that we use to do our job. And these are all outlined in the corporate budget recommendations. And there's a whole call that is just the whole team from headquarters going over what the budget recommendations are. And it gets very granular. It gets down to Isaac telling you, this is your Hootsuite cost, and this is your wing cost. And then Carrie Drost says, this is your Cision cost. And Sarah Acumen gets on and says, this is your Tableau cost. So if you haven't been on that call previously, make sure you download the spreadsheet that they send out, print it out, highlight your property recommendations, and sit there and listen on that call as they go through those systems, because that will help you, avoid surprises. If you're tracking your spend, but all of a sudden you're getting invoices from our headquarter office, and you're like, I don't know what this invoice is for, and I didn't budget for it, that's where the surprises come. So avoid the surprises, get on the annual call about the budget recommendations. And then if you're tracking the spending that you're responsible for on top of that, by the end of this process, you'll know what you're spending, and you'll be ready to look at 2018 and ask the questions that Jeff is going to get into in his portion of the presentation, which is up next.
Awesome. Thank you, Kirstin. That was great. And we'll have some screenshots later in the presentation of some of the tools you can use to budget. Jeff, if you're ready.
I am. Yes, thank you.
Welcome.
That's a good transition. We were actually on a home office sales marketing revenue call this morning, going over lots of those home office recommendations and talking about what that looks like this year. So very relevant timing. And thank you for the transition into my portion of this. I approached this a little bit more tactically, but more hopefully sitting in your chairs and thinking about, how am I going to approach a budget for next year? And usually the way I look at this sort of task is to ask some key questions. And so I've outlined several different slides with really a variety of questions that you can really ask yourself to make sure that you're aligning your tactical strategy to your budget strategy. And you're really thinking about this for the end result of how your dollar is spent and how it obviously benefits your guests, your owners, and certainly your fellow team members. So I like, as a brand person, to start at a very high level and think about what is the real promise and selling proposition that we as a property want to offer in 2018. So before you even start your budget, thinking about what story you're going to tell this coming year with your property. It can be really very storytelling, narrative driven, thinking about your guest almost as a character in that story. But ultimately, what experience do you want to deliver? And within that, what promise are you going to make to your guests? And how does that translate to your internal culture to empower your team members to really deliver to your guests? And ultimately, how does that translate to delivering profitability to your owners? So certainly from there, you can jump into segmentation and really thinking about, if this is the story I'm telling this year, who's the primary guest? What are the different audiences that we're focused on for 2018? And what has that guest been getting from our competitors that maybe we haven't been delivering on? And really looking at your comp set and thinking about, how are they capturing the guests that we want or a portion of our market share? What have they been up to? And then what can we give our guests next year that we've never been able to give them, or our competition isn't giving them, that's going to differentiate us maybe a little bit in 2018 from what we did in 2017. You can go to the next slide. So then, choosing best practices and really understanding where your engagement already exists and where to invest your money. And a lot of your home office channel leaders are going to come up with recommendations about where to best spend your dollars. But you certainly know your hotel best, your market best. And so working with your teams to really understand the tactical channels that are already performing for you and where your guests are reaching out for more information as well as engaging with us. So asking questions around each channel, is email converting? Is our PR agency really helping us to drive business? Or is there a different relationship that we want to have with our PR firm? And do we need to look at budget around that this year? What's our social feed? Are social feeds converting? Am I optimizing our book direct messaging? Loyalty program, if applicable. Are you able to garner data out of your loyalty program and your CRM? If you have it, CRM access, to really be able to understand what performed in 2017 and what engagement looked like. And then are there any other channels that that are out there in the industry that you're not using that you could be beta testing next year and might require some form of an investment? So, your channel leaders are going to already have done some opportunity cost analysis and really help you focus your spending. But certainly really looking at your audience segmentations and understanding are certain channels more beneficial to your overall, revenue generation? Is one audience obviously costing you more to reach than another? And is there a more efficient way to approach that audience? And ultimately really looking at cost of retention versus, really doing things that benefit your existing database. And figuring out your tactical strategies to reach them, and how to front load your dollars to make sure that you're focused on continuing to retain guests versus maybe the more costly practice of acquiring new guests. So planning the bulk of your spending around expanding your best guest database is certainly a tactic that's recommended. and, you know, really planning a certain portion of your new guest acquisition, but understanding a benchmark for how much you're willing to spend to acquire a new individual guest, and what channels you're going to utilize to go after new guests versus retain, you know, your best guests. So next slide. You know, how do you specifically plan to reach your audience? This is really your marketing tactical plan, and certainly your affinity team leaders can help you with this. The Katie Johnsons and Maureens of our world are obviously amazing resources for this, and they have their, you know, guides and tools and tricks of the trade that you obviously are all encouraged to access. But definitely make sure your tactical marketing strategy is aligned, and then look at, you know, personalization as, you know, not the new frontier, but the now frontier, that we have to be looking more and more into how we can use our tactical tools and our spending to get more and more personal with our guests, and understanding which of our channels are able to do that level of customization, and outlining a strategy for each channel, making sure that your dollars aren't going to waste. And jump to the next slide. So obviously this is a pretty much a no-brainer, but there are different ways to look at particularly your marketing and sales strategy tactical plans by organizing them into, you know, campaign calendars. So, you know, segmenting your year into quarterly, whether that's, you know, 4 sets of 3-month goals with monthly benchmarks and spending strategies aligned. Looking at seasonal strategies and aligning your spending around, you know, seasonal and holiday segments, or maybe looking very specifically into your audience segmentation and your travel occasion segmentation, or your revenue producing segmentations, you know, whether that's meetings, weddings, corporate events, family leisure, you know, international. You can look at all these different segments and obviously organize spending around each channel based on how much value you know you produce out of each area. And you can certainly take an approach where you combine multiple calendar concepts, like, you know, organize into quarterly, but then break into segments. Work out what works best for you, but you know, certainly make sure that you're keeping your calendars organized and you're thinking about your spending aligned to a calendar, so that you could really track and monitor your spending throughout the year. Next slide. And then the last piece is just all about, you know, really evaluation and innovation in your budgeting. So going into a new calendar year, obviously you have the ability to evaluate and rate your vendor relationships. Make sure that who you're working with is really obviously giving you a return on your dollar. You know, commit to vetting alternatives to your vendors if they aren't performing. You know, renegotiating of pricing. Making sure you have best pricing. Even if you have a great vendor, it doesn't hurt to go back to them and say, is there a different financial arrangement that we can align to? You know, an example of that, for those of you that work with our creative firms like Biggest Little Design, you know, we've worked with Angie at Biggest Little Design to come up with some pricing and packaging for property level kind of mini retainers and preferred pricing for our hotels, so that you're not kind of guessing as to what a standard piece of collateral is going to cost you, a brochure, a sales sheet, an email template. You know, rather than have you guessing and negotiating on a piece-by-piece basis, we've already approached that vendor to say, is there a better way to work out this relationship? Is there something we can offer to our property teams that's going to make their planning for creative services easier? So that's something that, you know, we always do on your behalf for the home office level vendor relationships, but you certainly have some one-offs in your own categories, and we all leverage these vendors differently. So make sure you're looking at best pricing as much as possible. And then, you know, a couple other pieces in here, and you can read these. I won't go through every single one of them because I know we have, you know, time restraints, but I think talking to each other and talking especially to other revenue leaders as well as marketing leaders in your individual collection about, you know, what they've done well, what their success stories look like, making sure that you're sharing best practices around budget as well as alignment to tactical planning. Make sure you're utilizing each other, because obviously you all have different perspectives and different value to give to one another. So,
hey Jeff, can I comment on that too?
Yeah,
can I just
add
one comment to that? Because I think you're spot on. Like, that's not only, learning best practices, but then collaboration too. So whether, you're a ski property and you want to work with another similar property, like how can you work together to cross market to your databases too? Like, I know one time Kirstin at Resort Squaw Creek worked with Vail Cascade to purchase an acquisition campaign. They shared the costs, similar target markets, similar message, look at how you can collaborate and leverage one another to promote each property too. So just another idea.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that was actually my next bullet, was explore shared costs with shared collection properties around tools. So I think that piggybacks a little bit off what you just said as well. As there are definitely opportunities sometimes even to share costs with certain situations. So thanks, Katie.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff.
And that's it for my slides.
Yeah, I thought that was great, Jeff. You make a lot of good points. When you mention shifting budget, now's the time to attract a new audience. So that really goes for all segments. If you're wanting to change, the type of group that you've been traditionally going after, or, the type of wedding guest that you were previously attracting, and now you're going for, the destination wedding guest, or, whether it be a certain market segment of that, and, goes for leisure. And really now is the time to say, who is it that we want to get that ideal guest for next year, and making the proper strategic steps to get there. Awesome. Well, I would like to introduce Kelsey Prince for some budgeting tips.
Perfect. Thanks. So I just want to start by saying that, I am a little bit newer to the budgeting process. And last year I was on this call and was pretty unfamiliar with just how everything worked. And I had kind of gotten my feet wet in budgeting a little bit, but this past year has really helped me in growing a ton. And the first step to that growth was really meeting with my DOSM. Like, that's been mentioned a bunch of times, but we put something on the calendar monthly, and I just drilled her with questions. So if you're new to the budgeting process and you don't really know where to start, your DOSM is a great, place to start. And what I also did was met last year with some of our other properties. So I'm at Paradise Point and was able to meet with LaBerge and Town and Country and see any tips that they could really give me for budgeting, or anything that really worked for them. So that's kind of where I started, and have grown a lot in that I'm feeling a lot more comfortable with everything. But with that said, we kind of work reverse pyramid style. So at Paradise Point, we have a little bit of a limited sales and marketing budget. So for us, prioritizing is key. So we analyzed what worked and what didn't work last year, kind of using a lot of the tips that Jeff mentioned in his slides. And then after that, we break down by market segment. So we do about 60% leisure, 40% group. So leisure is really our base. So we break down what worked and what didn't last year. We prioritize our goals for this year, and then we layer that in by market segment. Something to also mention is that we are going through a renovation. So our audience is kind of changing a little bit, and we're trying to get a little bit different of an audience after we complete that renovation. So that's something that we also keep in mind when we're planning our goals and when we're really deciding that high level goal for the year, and then we'll break that down quarterly as well. So after prioritizing our market segments, we'll break down by channel. So as I said, with the smaller budget, this is really crucial for us. So our base is really media and media e-commerce, digital as well. And then print and some of those other things we kind of save to really play around with throughout the year. So we add in a little bit for print, but we really leave that for really awesome opportunities that come up, and we decide on a case-by-case basis if we can go with some of those opportunities. So an example for that is we decided that we wanted to do a lot of niche marketing with the LGBT community for weddings. So we got some really, really awesome different opportunities that had to do with those that we were targeting. So we were able to move some, money around and play with that to make print work for us this year. So as we go into planning for next year, we'll keep that in mind, and hopefully we'll be able to grow that segment, grow print a little bit, just because it worked so well for us this year. So as I said, I schedule a meeting with our DOSM, and then I'll also bring in our Director of Revenue every once in a while to just check in and see if there's any added value that we can get from him there. When planning, we are as descriptive as possible. So in the past, when we've looked at past budgets, we might have a line for, $3,000 for San Diego Magazine, but nobody knows what campaign that is associated with. So moving forward, when we're planning, we're as descriptive as possible. We list the campaign, the dates, and all of that good stuff, paying special attention to the titles and the details of every line item. So when we're actually planning the budget, we start planning in Excel, and then that just allows us to add a lot more detail and get everything ironed out in front of our face before we implement into Dash. So, won't go into Dash at all because that'll be on the next call, but something we found really helpful is definitely using the plan function. And then also something that I'll go over monthly with our DOSM is the profit and loss statement. So that's just to see where you're spending, if anything looks weird, if anything looks out of the ordinary, and moving on from there. Can go ahead. So this is just a little segue into Dash. Again, won't go into this too much, but this just shows how we break things down, and this was kind of our overview. And then as we move things around from month to month in our monthly meetings, we'll add details to each of these line items. We'll switch things around. This one is e-commerce, so it's pretty stagnant, but with things like collateral and print and some of our other areas, we'll definitely be moving things around from month to month. It's very fluid for us. So really the base that I like to go off of is really using that marketing tactical plan to build everything, but also know that things can change, and that's especially true for us as we have different needs, and as our renovation moves around and dates change, and we have a little bit of different need periods and things like that. And that is just about it for me.
Awesome, thank you. And I don't know how many people are using Dash as a tool, but it is extremely helpful for maintaining and managing your budget throughout the year, but also even building it. So I know right now, I believe the home office finance team is working on basically, if you have this built in Dash like Kelsey does, they will duplicate it in Dash for 2018. So in the next few weeks, you would be able to visit the 2018 portion of your budget in Dash and really manipulate it from there. So you're not having to start all over. You have those assumptions there, and then you could delete the ones that found you didn't work, and then you could add the ones that you're budgeting for in 2018. So great news for those who are using it. It's a super easy tool, and you can see it firm up the numbers and what you actually spent at the end of each month. So we'll be going through Dash later this, a month from now in September, with a director of finance from Sun River, Mr. Samwell, and Skip James will be joining us from Lansdowne to talk about how marketing can work with finance to utilize Dash in harmony. So thank you all. We're going to open it up for Q&A. If anyone has questions or thoughts or tips, best practices. I know some of you joined the HSMEI webinar before this call. Unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to join, so I hope to watch the recording. But if anyone, had best practices they learned while they were on that.
Sarah, it's Molly from Sun River. Just one general comment. one thing that we've done the last couple of years that's really been helpful for us on the front end of the budgeting is to set up a meeting with our director of finance to review the revenue streams for the resort and just kind of get an idea of the lay of the land and really where we should, on the leisure side, be kind of focusing our, not just monetary, but physical resources for the department. So anyway, that's one thing that we do.
That's a great idea. And your finance team right now, if you maintain the budget process or the business planning process, they should be working on a document called KPI, the Key Performance Indicators, and that document is helpful too in determining how much money and marketing spend you'll use in those different verticals. Anybody else? Don't be shy.
Hey, Sarah, it's Katie. I just have one other comment, and I think Jeff had it on his slide, but I think it's really key. There's a couple things. One, reviewing your comp set, just seeing what they're doing, whether it be, how they're advertising, if they have any renovations that they're planning or any, service experience touch points that they're doing, and just really evaluating how you're going to deliver against your brand and your brand promise at the property, and then also just any market-related conditions that will impact what you need to do next year. Someone commented about renovations, partnerships, repositioning, but just any of those things that are happening in the future, just to plan accordingly for them. And then the last one that I had that I think is really key, and this is for properties that have, they might have more revenue streams. They have multiple agencies, whether it's digital or branding or PR, but just really ensuring that once you outline your goals and your strategies for the following year, to communicate and share that with them so that they can really help you build the best plan, with their abilities. And then also potentially having like a partner summit where you bring them all in and, collaborate and share and just make sure that all of your partners are working together to drive the best results for you.
Great idea.
Sarah, this is Kirstin. I'll just make one more comment. And it's just a total overview comment, but I know that budgeting season can sometimes be very overwhelming for all of us, but I would really encourage, especially anyone at even if you're at a very smaller property with a very small marketing budget, like I am at Snowmass, this is still a fantastic opportunity to learn about new technologies and what it might cost. So last year I did a pretty in-depth exploration of potentially starting video content for Snowmass, and in the end we couldn't afford it and I didn't do it, but I feel much more confident as I move through the process and just in my own personal career that I understand what it takes to get into video, because I did that analysis even though the Snowmass budget can't support video. So I would also encourage everybody, particularly those of you who are getting into this process for the very first time, to really embrace the process as a learning opportunity for you personally, and not just, I work for a small property, we have a small budget, I can't afford that, so I don't even need to look at it. It's really worth your time to see what's out there, because who knows, where you're going to be in 5 years, and if the opportunity that you analyze might come back into play at another time. So be excited. Budgeting is really kind of cool because you get to think of all the new cool stuff you get to do.
Great advice, Kirstin. I agree. It will make you a better leader with financial acumen if you spend the time to get to learn about different segments you may have not budgeted. And that's what makes us all grow and challenge ourselves. So great point.
Hi, Sarah. It's Keela, your marketing coordinator.
You're not a coordinator anymore.
Oh, wait, manager. Sorry, I'm so used to saying coordinator. I see how it goes down here, but when you first start the budgeting process, do you make a list of everything that you think would be really cool to do, and then you go from there, or do you just go from the list that you already have? Like, how do you parse out what
Does anyone want to share their current practice?
This is Kirstin. I definitely start with the dream list, and then
list. Okay.
Yeah, last year I got told to cut $150,000 out of my dream list. So
wow.
It's definitely a dream list, for sure, but it's sort of like, if I got to do all the cool marketing stuff that I want to do, what would I do? And then you just go from there. That's how I start. Because otherwise, you kind of curtail the new ideas before they even get to germinate. You know what I mean? So.
And for most destination properties, and Katie and Jeff could comment to this, but I think most properties, their marketing budget is either 6 to 8% of their total revenue for the year. So you usually stay within that range. Sometimes it's less for some properties. So you just kind of work within that framework, and then know that, you know, even, not every idea is going to make the cut, but you include it and hope for the best. And if it didn't work out, then you include it next year. Another tip I did learn too, last year in the budgeting process, I'll share with everyone, is if you can front load a lot of your marketing spend at the beginning of the year, because if things start to go awry midway through the year, and then you start having to cut budget, you run the risk of having to cut a lot of your marketing spend. That sometimes works for seasonality too, right? So for some properties like DC, where it's extremely slow in November, December, you don't want to put a lot of cost in months that are going to not have much revenue to support it, if that makes sense. So that was actually a tip I learned from Steve Miggs during the budgeting process, was to put it at the front end of the year instead of having it in the back end.
And Sarah, everybody, it's Maureen as well. Absolutely agree with that. And also, I want to encourage everyone, a lot of times we'll see a substantial decrease in marketing spend the first quarter of the year because properties are concerned about getting their budgets approved and so forth. You still have to be spending. And so don't let the fact that a budget isn't fully approved to not spend in the first quarter when you need it. So I encourage everybody to do that. And then secondly is, Katie and I, and through everybody's input and guidance, have continued to refine the marketing tactical plan, and Katie put together a really comprehensive set of guidelines for it. And in the marketing tactical plan is the list of all the 825, expense budget lines. So everything, everything on your wish list, your dream list, everything is ultimately going to be coded into one of those categories. So when you're starting to look at your budgets, like Sarah said, we're typically between 6 and 8, but I think the general company average is about 7.1%. So through the years, it's decreased because our spend has gotten heavily, influenced by digital. Then you go back and you look at those line items, what's really going to be relevant. We're not producing as much collateral or printed materials. A lot of that production, those costs have been significantly reduced through the years. And obviously, we tend to spend more on digital NPR and some other areas as well. So when you're thinking your wish list, everybody has contributed such great information today about taking a deep dive and thorough look at who is your customer, where are the opportunities, what channels are really influencing, and what kind of customer is your comp set getting. That would be the type of guest who would spend the ADR and provide the length of stay that you're looking for to drive your performance. So I think then you go into, so you can do your wish list in sort of a methodical way. If you look at the 825 budget lines and say, okay, these are the allocations that can potentially have the most impact. So Kirstin, you going through a video exercise, that's excellent. Because who knows, maybe one day there'll be a windfall, or, ultimately you may shift something from another category. That's why the marketing tactical plan is such a critical part of your ongoing planning process, because you could be looking great for 6 months, and then you have a group cancel, and all of a sudden you've got to get out a lot of customer acquisition campaigns, you've got to up your PPC spend or retargeting lines or social media campaigns, whatever it is. So always, understanding your budget at a very deep level is very important, and then having a well-defined marketing tactical plan. And of course, this year we're introducing the strategic marketing plan again too, because these documents are not only going to help you, but as Katie said, your partners, any of your agency partners, digital, creative marketing services, public relations, all these different agencies that might be supporting your property. If you can give them a well-defined plan, help them understand the budget and where it's allocated, you're going to perform so much better as a team.
That's such a great point, Maureen. And, kind of on that same topic is, I think those who are going into this for the first time know that ownership is going to approve this, but they may have questions if some of your line items are going up drastically year over year. And so you want to have those justifications ready on why you are spending less or why you're spending more, or if there's a reclass of things, maybe they're in a different GL line this year. So being prepared with answering those questions, and even looking back further than just the year before, but looking back if they want to start questioning you on, oh, well, you're spending more than you'd have since 2013. Well, come with that justification of what was happening in those years and what you might be gearing up for if it's a big campaign. Because if it's important to you and they see that it's important and that there's a justification behind it, they're more willing to kind of get behind it and say, okay, let's do this, and there's going to be an ROI to it in the long run, hopefully.
And they will have questions. That's a given.
Yeah, they will.
Being prepared is really important.
Well, one comment to that too, talking about the ROI, we're always quick to say what the ROI is, but we have to be a little bit careful with that, because some of the tactics that we have don't necessarily have an ROI. It's more about building our brands and our property relevance. So just, if you need help defending certain areas, definitely reach out to us too, because I know we get pushback on something that maybe doesn't have a return. Because again, it might be brand building or long-term strategy. So I think that's really key, is just, striking the balance between building your brand and then also generating revenue.
I love that comment, Katie. And I think that's so important in emphasizing that at the end of the day, you're providing a guest experience and you're using these marketing tools and the sales tools to really tell a story to the market. And that's not always quantifiable, and that there are intangible elements to creating an emotional bond with your different segments. And sometimes you need to be able to articulate, that a tactic might not have a direct ROI, but it's helping to establish loyalty and long-term relationships with your guests.
Awesome. Anybody else? Love the dialogue today.
Sorry, one more question. So you guys come up with the marketing, the marketing story before you come up with the budget. Sorry, I just kind of talked out loud. I guess there's no way to do the budget without knowing where you're going for the year.
I think that's a very important
correct.
comment. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, got it.
Yep, that's why the first part is the strategic plan, which properties should be working on now. Directors of finances should be working on the KPI and the growth that's going to happen in every department. And then to support that, you come up with the marketing plans that is going to, help drive the anticipated revenue and the budget, essentially.
Got it.
This is Kirstin from Snowmass. I'm just going to make a final plug that we are still looking for presenters of shoulder season campaigns for our call on September 7th. So if anyone would like to be a presenter, you can present something big or small. You can have slides, or you can just talk. If you want to be a part of the call and you have a great shoulder season campaign or even an idea, please get in touch with me. Thanks.
Thank you. So just want to reiterate. Anybody else? Somebody's jumping in? Okay. Just want to reiterate that. Oh, sorry. I knew I heard someone.
Sorry. I just wanted to go back really quick to the point Katie made about things may not have ROI, and also the plug about a lot of people aren't doing collateral anymore because we're so digital. So if you need help justifying why you want to spend more in collateral, let me know, because I increased my budget year over year from 16 to 17, very significantly. I think it was $60,000 year over year in collateral. So if you want any insight about tips and tricks for what guests are looking for or how to justify that to ownership, let me know, because we've had great success with what we printed this year and really great guest and owner feedback. And that's one of the reasons why we printed so much. So not just printing aimlessly, but, getting that feedback from them and seeing what they're looking for, but also working with partners. So we worked with some partners that we didn't let them advertise. We created their section, but they reimbursed us for that placement. So being a little clever on how you can work with some local partners to help pay for your collateral as well. So
Great suggestion. Katie Shepard from Suncadia.
Yeah, sorry.
Anything else? All right. Great job, everyone. So our next call is on Thursday, September 21st, and you're going to learn how to dash. And something you can do in advance of that call is if you want to ask your director of finance for a login to Dash and access to the sales and marketing budget. And then you can maybe play around in there prior to the call, or be prepared to play around after the call and kind of get in there once you learn the tips and tricks on our next call. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Great afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.